Good evening, everyone. I am Danny Nicole, and I am your host of Book Talk, Author Visibility Podcast. And on tonight's podcast, we will be speaking with author Sandra Gamble. So I will have Sandra introduce herself, tell us a little bit about her book, where she's from, and we will move forward from there. So, Sandra, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello. Thank you for having me. My name is Sandra Gamble, also known as the Hope Dealer. Some people sell dope. I don't do that. I'm just out here dealing hope. People builders. Some people build houses. I build people. Mental health counselor, life coach, author, notary, Mary Kay consultant, and Jesus girl.
All right, I like that.
Yeah.
And so, the book today, you're going to talk to us, give us the title, and give us a little description of the book.
Sure. To Hell and Back, The Power of Forgiveness and Redemption is my memoir. It's my story, and it addresses my tragedy, but also my triumph. It's the recap of me literally going to what I believe was my hell and making it back, and the power of forgiveness and redemption. And the purpose of the book is to shed light on mental illness and also to help people to understand that you might have been pitiful, but you can make a decision to become powerful, and having that hard conversation and the power in forgiveness and redemption. I took care of dad that could not take care of me for 12 years.
So, what inspired you to write this book?
I always had the title, even when I was still dealing with unresolved issues with my dad. I had this title over 20 years. It was two books that I felt that the Lord had given me. This book was To Hell and Back, The Power of Forgiveness and Redemption. And then there was another book title I heard called Inside These Walls, A Culture Within the Culture, because I worked in maximum security prison for 7 years. And so I didn't want to write this book. Let me go ahead and be honest. I didn't want people to know my story. I did not want people to know that I was verbally, physically, and emotionally abused by my dad. But the conviction was so strong until I had to write the book. It was like I no longer had any peace. And so in September of 2020, during the pandemic, I made a decision to release this book.
And can you walk us through that journey that made the forgiveness possible?
Sure. Well, I'm an only child. My parents, what appeared to be an ideal family. I just want to take you on a little journey real quick. Both my parents worked. We had the acre land. We had the newly built home. We had the perfect manicured yard by society standards. We were the American family living the American dream. But inside my home, that was not the case. My dad had a lot of mood swings. He had irritability. You never knew what was going to set him off. And he was verbally, physically, and emotionally abusive to myself as well as my mother. I remember him telling me I wanted a boy, telling me things like, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're ugly, you'll never be anything, you're never about to anything. And I believed him because I didn't have the tools to change it. When I was 14 years old, my mom finally made the decision to leave for good this time and get a divorce. And I believe that divorce saved me. I knew something was not right with my dad, just did not know what it was. But it took me on a journey when I went off to college. I majored in psychology. I have a bachelor's in psychology, just to kind of get answers for my own life. And it helped me to understand that my dad has some type of mental illness. Did not erase my pain, did not erase my experiences or what happened. But what it did was it gave a name to the thing that he was dealing with. When I came out of college in 94, my plans was to go to Atlanta, come back, check on mom, but I was done with dad, had daddy issues. And my dad ended up getting sick and had a nervous breakdown a month after I got out of college. So, of course, being an only child, people looked to me to take care of my dad, and I wasn't having any part of it. So I was just saying that if he's sick, he better get well really quick because I'm an adult now and I don't have to deal with this. But I tell people all the time, when you want to make God laugh, you tell him your plans. And so what ended up being one hospitalization ended up in 32 hospitalizations over a 12-year period for mental health and or physical health. His diagnosis was bipolar manic depressive disorder with psychotic features. And when I realized that I was going to have to take care of my dad, not because I chose to, but because the scripture said, honor thy mother and thy father, I was very angry. I was still bitter. And I told God I was. But I felt like in the 12 years, he gave me the opportunity to acknowledge my pain, but also to go on a journey of healing and forgiveness, and understanding that the forgiveness was not for my dad, that the forgiveness was for me. And the person that stepped out of prison was myself, that I did not have to hold my father accountable for the things that he did to me or didn't do, that he would have to answer for that. I just had to release it because it had power over me, and I didn't like the person that I was becoming. And so I made a decision to forgive him. I wrote him a letter telling him that I forgive him for all the things that he did and didn't do. Of course, he did not acknowledge it, but I understood by this time that my healing was on me. And so I gave myself permission to heal. I gave myself permission to move from this place. And I also gave myself permission to go back and heal so I could help other people.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. So you had talked about a little earlier, your father was verbally abusive. So after hearing those harsh words, how did that keep those words from defining your future?
I believed it because I didn't have the tools to change it. And so I don't know, one day it just seems like I was going down the wrong road. And I literally almost stopped in my tracks in my 20s, early 20s. I was in college, but it's almost like I was self-sabotaging. And I remember having a conversation with myself, and I said, you know what, Sandra? I said, you cannot help what your dad called you, but it's up to you as to what you answer to. And I said, if you fail, Sandra, it's not because of your dad, it's because you choose to fail. And so in that moment, I understood that I had the power to change the trajectory of my life.
Okay. And so what was the moment where you realized you could no longer keep that story inside, when you realized you wanted to go, to share that story?
It just got loud. It got so loud until I couldn't. I kept making excuses. I had never written a book before, and that was true. But I remember one of my friends had self-published, and she had a book signing. And I went to her book signing as support. And the young lady that assisted her with getting her book out was there. And she told me, she said, I'm going to take some time off now. She's a teacher. She said, because I've been helping other people. And she said, I need a mental reset. And I said, okay. And then I just started telling her my story. And in that moment, she said, wow. She said, the world needs to hear your story. And she said, I'll offer you a special if you're able to pay it within this window. She said, I'll help you with your book. And so that day, I paid her with no intentions of writing a book. I was just like, I'm going to do it, but I'm not writing this book. And a whole nother year went by before I wrote the book. And that's when the pandemic hit, because I kept saying I don't have time to write the book. I was working as a mental health counselor. And when we got sent home because of the pandemic, then I could hear God say, now what's your excuse? But when I tell you all kind of crazy things were happening with me, like somebody had backed into my car and the car was parked. I mean, like so much random weird stuff was happening. I was like, okay, God, I'm going to write this book. I'm going to just write this book. Okay.
Exactly.
And so it just got too loud. It got too loud and it got too heavy. That's the best I can tell you.
Thank you for sharing. So, what fears have you faced, if any, when it came to sharing your writing publicly? Because now you've written a book, it's out there for others to read. So, was there any fears or challenges after or before the book was written?
There was challenges because, I said, there's some family members that's not going to agree with me writing this book because culturally we were taught what happens in our house stays in our house.
Yes.
But I said, no, not when the person that's supposed to protect you is actually the person that inflicted the pain. And so I had to just sit with the fact that I was going to have some backlash from some people, but I was going to stand in my truth and tell my truth, not to expose my dad or bash anyone, but to bring awareness and have a voice for the voiceless. So many other people that didn't have the courage to speak up for themselves, to say, hey, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. And let's have a conversation in the African American community that mental illness is real. That yes, we can go to church and we can pray about it, but faith without works is dead. While you're praying, you still have to do something. And so I just wanted to help myself, but I also wanted to help other people. I didn't want people to suffer unnecessarily like I had to suffer.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so What do you hope readers will take from this story?
Hope that I take readers on a journey of triumph, and how I traded in my pitiful for powerful, and how I traded in my victim mentality to be victorious, and how I made a decision to make pain pay. And that's what I want people to understand, is that it doesn't matter what you have endured or what have gone through, if you allow yourself the permission to heal, because you got to give yourself permission to heal. And we can only heal what we feel. That when we give ourselves that permission, right? And then when we go on a journey of self discovery and counseling, then we can define our lives by how we want it to look. That what happened to us is not as important as what happens through us if we do the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So finish this sentence for me. My story deserves to be told
Because there are too many people that have similar stories and they're silent.
Okay, absolutely. And that's what the podcast is about. I know that there's authors out there who have a story and they want to share, and like you said before, the first thing is getting it out there, right? Because sometimes you're held back because you're not sure what people are going to say, what people are going to think. But if God is leading you to tell that story, you got to tell the story. You have to be obedient because someone's going to want to hear, and someone, if it's just one person, but the story needs to be told. Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely. So where can readers follow you? Give us your website, your social media handles.
Yes. So I do have a website, and my website is dealinghopenotdope.com, all one word, dealinghopenotdope.com. And on Facebook, just as Sandra Gamble. That's where I'm most active. I do have TikTok and I do have Instagram, but I'm most active on Facebook. That's how you can really connect with me.
Okay. And so what's next on your author journey? What do you got? Tell us what's coming up, where you're going to be, what's your next project?
Okay, what's next is just continue to get on platforms and have the hard conversations. That's the space that God has me in. I've also written several other books since this book, and I am working on something else. So stay tuned. I'm back in the lab, so pray my strength. And upcoming events, this Saturday, I will actually be a speaker at a rainbow talking about forgive so you can live. So I'm a speaker in the small town called Lamar, South Carolina. And then July 25th, I will be at the Authors Expo in Columbia, South Carolina. So come on out and see all the wonderful authors from all over the world under one roof, about 40 authors. So I'm excited about that. And then August 15th, I will be conducting a grief workshop actually at a funeral home in the small town called Pamplico, South Carolina, because I also wrote a book on grief and it's entitled Good Grief. So I'm moving around and doing a little bit of things.
Great, great. No, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you
for that. That's a great accomplishment. So you should be proud. You're doing it. You are out here making your way, right?
Yes, it's not easy, but it's my purpose. And I tell people all the time, if you want to know your purpose, when the call keeps calling, then you understand that that's your purpose.
Yes, absolutely. That is so true. And so to the listeners, please like, share, follow, and comment on the podcast. And Sandra has shared with us where we can follow her if we want to, see the other events and what's happening with her on this author journey. And I want to thank you, Sandra, for stopping by the Book Talk podcast. I really do appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to jump on and have a real conversation, because that's what the podcast is for. Real conversations with real authors about their real journey as an author. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I just want to say this to anybody.
Yes.
I had never written a book before. The only thing, if that's your story, just get started. The hardest part is starting.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That is good advice. That is so true. It's just the starting. You wanna stop and find every excuse. But like you said, then the voice gets louder and it's like, okay, I got some work to do, right?
Yeah, because I'm tired of not being able to sleep. You have all these ideas flooding out your mind, and you're like, okay, I can't even rest. So let me
Yes.
get this book out. Let me birth this book,
Yes.
so I can rest.
Yes, absolutely. And if you're an author and you listen to this podcast and you would like to come on the podcast and share your book and talk about your book, you can find me on Facebook at Book Talk Author Visibility, or you can go to payhip.com/the variety shop and you can go ahead and sign up to be on the podcast. But with that being said, again, Sandra, thank you so much for your time. And I don't like to say good luck because it's God. So God bless. That's what we'll say.
Yes, most definitely, God.
Yes, God is good, and I appreciate you taking out the time.
Thank you so much.
You have a great night.
You too.